Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Shall we begin by singing together?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Portland, Oregon. We're a multi-generational community that strives to put love at the center of all that we do here together. Our work is to nurture our spirits, to support one another wherever we are on our journeys, and to advocate for justice in the wider world. Whether you're here in the sanctuary today or joining us online, we're glad you're here. It's good to be together. If you are new here today, or sort of new, we hope you will join our welcome circle in the side gallery right over there by the big sign following the service. You can learn more about First Unitarian. You can ask your questions and meet other newcomers. So please, if you're new here, do join us if you have the time to do that. After the service, everyone is invited to our social hour in Fuller Hall, which is just directly downstairs, so you can follow the crowd if you don't know your way. You can enjoy a beverage, visit our wonderful book and greeting card store, and also stop by our Creating Connections auction table, which will be down in Fuller Hall. The auction is accepting donations through April 7th, getting ready for the first bidding day, which is April 20th, and I think a lot of you have either given donations for the auction or have participated in them. There are always lots of wonderful events to have fun and get to meet and know new people. Our music ministry transition team also wants to hear from everyone. So after the service at 11:45 in the chapel, you will have an opportunity to share your thoughts on the evolving music program and what you might imagine in the days ahead. And lastly, just a reminder that every Tuesday we offer a Connect and Reflect Zoom gathering for any and all congregants. This Tuesday we'll be discussing the April 5th nationwide protests, the hands-off protests, and what First Unitarians' role might be both at those protests and in the coming weeks and days. So you can find that Connect and Reflect Zoom link on the church's website calendar. And now we have some special words regarding our upcoming Seder from Marguerite Cohen. Marguerite.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marguerite Cohen, and I've been a member here at First Church since about 2005. Last year, I heard the church was having a Seder, and I signed up immediately and had a marvelous time. So, of course, I'm on the Seder Planning Committee this year. The Seder is now only 2 weeks away on April 13th at noon in Buchan Hall. Now, I grew up in the Unitarian Church in San Francisco, and we never had Seders there, but we had them at my grandma's house. And I remember the stories and waiting a very long time till dinner. And I didn't understand that I wasn't supposed to drink the whole tiny glass of blackberry wine at the first prayer. It did not get refilled. Seders tell the story of slavery, exile, liberation, freedom, and hope. They are community events designed for everyone with no requirement to be Jewish or even Jew-ish. There are stories, songs, a game of hide and seek, and then a delicious meal. And we have to-go containers for the leftovers. You do need to sign up soon, but space is limited but still available. And registration closes next Sunday, April 6th. The cost is $25 for adults, $10 for children, and these fees just cover the cost of the food. You can register through a link in the front steps or use the QR code at the table in Fuller Hall after the service. There are some things I've resolved to do in my life. Always order bouillabaisse or cioppino when it's on the menu, and always go to Seder if I get an invitation. Thank you, and I hope to see you there.
And now it's time to greet our neighbors. If you're online, please use the chat function, and otherwise, time to say hello to each other.
Everyone's chatty today. Lots of spring energy in the room this morning. I'm going to invite Catherine up to light our chalice. And if you are joining us online, I invite you to light your own chalice or candle if you have one. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love. Thanks, Catherine. I call us into worship this morning with these words from Erica Hewitt. To be a Unitarian Universalist means we'll never be done with the work of telling the truth about oppression, the work of resisting any laws, policies, or practices that deny anyone their humanity. The work of stubbornly seeking out the spark of the divine in each other, no matter what, and the work of creating heaven on earth. But to be a Unitarian Universalist also means we are not alone in this work. We are not alone because of our promise to love one another. We are not alone because we are companions on the journey. We grow ourselves into allies, helping one another get free, because none of us is truly free until we are all free.
The musical offerings this morning are in honor of the last Sunday of this month, which is the month of Vision, and it is also in honor of the Trans Day of Visibility, which is tomorrow, March 31st. You'll see from our anthems, the first one that we're about to present to you is My Heart Be Brave by Marcus Garrett. This piece speaks to perseverance and bravery, even in the face of any form of adversity. The second anthem that the choir offers speaks about the stillness and the darkness of night, and when we find ourselves surrounded by nothing more than the moonlight and the stars, how do we persevere? The final piece you'll hear at the piano is the diligent march that we must continue to do to protect any and all people that exist in this world and that choose to live their authentic lives in this world, as they should do. Thank you.
Our responsive reading this morning is from Leslie Takahashi. As fear abounds, make courage as well. In these times, we know we will need to not turn away nor surrender in advance. In the coming years, when asked to turn away, to focus only on our own survival and to disregard our neighbors, knowing the promise of plurality, we will pay attention. We honor democracy despite its unrealized ideals. We who value the give and take of shaping a future understand the importance of those groups and places that are essential to democratic practices. Honoring the many places that offer sanctuary, we will pay attention. Though attacks on truth may rain down upon us, we will not succumb. What we spread will continue to be rooted in fact and to protect the honest lessons of history. As a truth-loving people, we will pay attention. We understand that the best of what we experience was hard-won by those who came before us. We will continue to honor our spiritual ancestors. We hold the special grief of those who never thought they would fight for their basic rights again. In the name of our ancestors, we will pay attention. We who have had years of thriving, who have enjoyed times of abundance, hear the cries of those generations who may never experience this. We will think about how we might have a bit less, that they have more. For the sake of our children, and all children are ours, we will pay attention. We who are struggling to comprehend all that is lost acknowledge the long struggle before us. We pledge to engage in joy and fun, care for ourselves and our beloveds, for undermining our own lives will not speed justice. For the sake of our own good bodies, hearts, and minds, we will pay attention. We will continue to hold the ideals of what our democracy might someday realize. When we are in a position to do so, we will defend others. When we are in need of defense, we will ask for assistance. In the spirit of interdependence, we will pay attention. In all of this, we remember that we do not do this alone. Together, we will pay attention. Now let us join in our doxology, Spirit of Life.
Now it's my turn. It's our custom to share our Sunday offering with community organizations that reflect our justice values. For the month of March, we're sharing our offering with Oregon Farm Workers Union, PCUN. Its mission is to empower farm workers and working Latinx families in Oregon by building community and increasing their representation in elections and policy making on both the state and national levels. They strive to create safe workplaces and advocate for fair wages and economic security. In a moment, our ushers will be passing baskets in the sanctuary for offerings by cash or check. And if you're in the sanctuary wanting to make an offering electronically, somewhere near you, you will see a yellow card, and you can use the QR code that's on that to donate. If you're an online viewer, you can also use the QR code that will appear on the screen in just a moment to make your offering. Thank you very much for your generosity that helps to sustain the work of this church and our community partners. was fabulous, Garrett. Thank you. And choir, your earlier anthem, just beautiful. Each week, we take time to, whoa, gosh, I have lost my place on here. Hold on here. We're looking at the parish concerns today for not just our own congregation, but for the world. I think most people are aware of the terrible earthquake affecting Myanmar and the neighboring regions, and we have prayers for them for sure. If you have a pastoral concern that you would like announced from the pulpit on a Sunday morning, you can send your request to parishnconcerns@firstunitarianportland.org, but you can also send prayers to prayer@firstunitarianportland.org. And also over in the galleries on either side, if you're here in the sanctuary, you can light a candle and also leave a prayer request. We have several concerns today. Congregant Joanne O'Connell died on March 4th at the age of 67. I think many of you knew her. Joanne was very active in our Pride group for many years. She worked for Multnomah County as a specialist for various programs, most recently for the Veterans Directed Care Program. And Joanne, if you knew her, always had a smile on her face and would take the time to listen to everyone. Longtime member Liz Julie died a week ago on Friday, March 21st. Many of you will remember her daughter, Tara Johnson-Manninger, who served as our Children's Christmas Pageant Director in past years. A memorial service was held for Liz on Wednesday. Radiance choir member Jason Paris's mother died this past Tuesday. Jason's with us this morning. Jason tells us that she was a spiritual, loving, and supportive parent to him and an important influence on his music and acting. They both sang at Clear Lake Presbyterian Church in Houston, Texas, throughout Jason's childhood and high school years, and she was always his biggest fan. We send our tender thoughts to Jason and his partner, Pax Bennett, at this time. And as Garrett said earlier, tomorrow is Trans Day of Visibility. We celebrate the trans, binary, and gender-expansive members of our community who contribute so much to the church. Let's commit not just to protecting trans rights during this extremely perilous time in our country, but to really see and honor the fullness of our trans and gender-expansive siblings and show gratitude for the ways they help us see beyond the binary. Will you join me in prayer, sharing the words of an unknown author? Let us take a moment to breathe together, to feel the warmth of our gathering, to recognize the love that is with us. Today, despite all that is being dismantled and torn down across our nation, even so, let us lift up gratitude for this place, for this community, for the work we are called to do in the world. In a time when so much is uncertain, we give thanks for the certainty of kindness. In a world that feels irreparably divided, we celebrate the togetherness we find here, and shared purpose and shared care. In each act of generosity and every word of encouragement, in all the small ways we lift one another up, we see the best that humanity can be. May this community be a source of light, not just within our walls, but far beyond them. May the work we do matter not because it is grand or perfect, but because it is real, because it is needed, because it comes from a place of deep care. In the face of leaders who would turn their backs on the people, on us, may we turn towards each other. May we build and rebuild systems of care and support. Be the hands that uplift, the voices that speak truth, the hearts that keep hoping. Let us walk forward with joy, cherishing the beauty of this life, the kindness of our friends and neighbors, the moments of love that remind us why we are here. Let us walk forward, not in despair, but in defiance of despair. Let us walk forward with the unshaken knowledge that goodness still exists and that we can be a part of it, that we must be. Amen. Let's be together for a few moments of silent meditation and reflection. Please remain seated as we sing together our next hymn. Our reading today is an excerpt from Prison Journals of a Priest Revolutionary written by Philip Berrigan in 1968, which happens to be the year I graduated high school. Note that we have kept the text exactly as Berrigan wrote it, including the outdated male language common to that time period. But the overall message is one which transcends any single gender or gender binary, and it feels eerily prescient. So the words of Philip Berrigan calling to us from 1968. For me, it is a rule that a man ought to test his life against events. The United States faces a crisis of staggering proportions. Some call it the worst since the Civil War. Others, the most severe in our history. Many sober observers are convinced that we have entered that period of decline reserved for empires that are falling apart. No one argues about the seriousness of the crises, but most will differ about its character. In any case, our traditional institutions seem impotent before it. Business, for example, rejects both an equitable tax load and a curb on excessive profits. The military not only practices imperial terrorism, but also influences high-level decision-making in domestic foreign policy. The church, too, is seized with an unholy rage for law and order, while government continues to represent power rather than people. Men still need to learn that excessive wealth, racism, and war mean the impossibility of a human, indeed a viable, society. Peace will remain an illusion until the atrocities of war and exploitation are eliminated. Perversely, men have always valued their poor, value them enough to ensure that they will be numerous. And men have always punished their prophets. This is because the poor and the prophet force others to look at themselves in different mirrors, the former showing men as they are, the latter as they can be. Since both reflections are painful, both are hated, along with those who show them. When men no longer use their poor to exalt their own egos, when they no longer destroy their prophets, then justice will have come to the poor, and prophecy shall be treasured as power is now. Having banished the ancient call to strife and blood, man can begin to compete in love and service. Then we will begin to live.
And let the people say, Amen. Thank y'all. If you were curious about the sermon topic and Googled prophetic vision, looking for some spoilers or clues about what exactly I was going to be preaching on today, there is a good chance you either decided to skip church or called the front office and were worried that we had been hacked. Because one of the first things that comes up when you Google prophetic vision is a website for a book titled His Second Coming, Prophetic Visions of Christ and His Return. There is a website proclaiming that we're in the midst of the next great awakening, some tips for seeing more visions if that's something that you want to do, predictions about the end of the world, and secrets that will allow you to see what heaven sees. They are sensational, evangelical, thoroughly unscientific, and about as far from Unitarian Universalism as you can get. But do not let Google's algorithm fool you. We are part of a prophetic faith tradition that we inherit from the Abrahamic religions, which inform our earliest foundings. Prophecy in these traditions is not about predicting the future. It's not about predicting the date of the second coming. It's not about the magic of fairy tales and fantasy novels where a young heroine receives a cryptic prediction about her future from a mysterious witch. No, in these traditions, prophets are those who see with great clarity the reality of the present. They ask us to look inside ourselves in order to confront our role in that reality. And finally, they help us envision a different future. Their gifts are not divination, but truth-telling and imagination. And those are things we need now in equal and abundant measure. We talk a lot about resistance in troubled political times, and I know I'm among those who, during the first Trump administration, bought t-shirts and bumper stickers simply reading #resist. But despite the catchiness of the one-word hashtag, resistance without context is not enough. Resisting unjust authority is necessary but insufficient if we aren't naming clearly and precisely what is happening, who and what we are resisting, and if we aren't offering a future alternative. Richard Rohr writes about how the prophets of the Hebrew Bible were people whose job it was to hold Israel maddeningly honest. They were, in Rohr's words, officially licensed critics who name and expose their own group's shadow side. They're described using words like watchman, sentry, and lookout. The prophet Isaiah is told, "Go post a lookout and have him report what he sees." I love that particular charge to the prophet. Prophetic witness begins with an honest account of what is happening. We need the prophetic vision of our journalists and whistleblowers, the citizens who film unjust arrests, ICE raids, and instances of police brutality. Our resistance is only effective when we know what it is we need to resist, and tyrants know this. That's why attacks on free press, like those this past week against public broadcasting, are an early tactic of authoritarian governments. But the prophetic task doesn't just stop at revealing what's happening. It also includes seeing and naming it for what it is. Not letting gaslighting and doublespeak and propaganda obscure what it is we're witnessing. The experts and historians who are telling us this is fascism, this is authoritarianism, this is an immediate threat to our democracy, or this is genocide, are engaged in deeply prophetic work, and we should offer gratitude for and hope to emulate their clarity of vision. And there's also an internal component to this perceptive work. This is why in our reading today, Philip Berrigan talks about prophets as those who force us to look in the mirror. Prophets are not external consultants, but internal critics who bring to light our own complicity with injustice and the ways many of us have and continue to benefit from war, racism, and poverty. This is important and necessary work, but it is not easy. There's a reason why the Bible says a prophet is not without honor except in his own hometown. But it remains part of our work and our task in these days. As we aim to clearly see and name what is happening in our country and in our world, and the injustices that are being committed in our names, we cannot place ourselves outside of the field of vision. So the first step of the prophetic task is to name what's happening for what it is. Part 2 is to hold up a mirror that lets us see clearly our role in creating or upholding that reality. But step three is the fun part, the hopeful part, the task for the artists and the poets here among us. Part 3 is offering an alternative. This, too, is the task of prophetic vision. Not to predict the future with accuracy, but to imagine a potential future beyond the limited possibilities presented to us by the powers that be. Hebrew Bible scholar Walter Brueggemann writes about this in his profound and enduring work, The Prophetic Imagination. He writes, "The prophet engages in futuring fantasy. The prophet does not ask if the vision can be implemented, for questions of implementation are of no consequence until the vision can be imagined. The imagination must come before the implementation. Our culture," he says, "is competent to implement almost anything and to imagine almost nothing. The same royal consciousness that makes it possible to implement anything and everything is the one that shrinks imagination because imagination is a danger. Thus, every totalitarian regime is frightened of the artist. It is the vocation of the prophet to keep alive the ministry of imagination, to keep on conjuring and proposing futures alternative to the single one the king wants to urge as the only thinkable one." This feels even more necessary now than it has in recent memory, as I look at voter trends and increasing isolation and disaffection of many segments of the population. Most notably, although not exclusively, young white men who on internet forums and podcasts are being fed a vision of the future based in fear and scarcity. And I'm not here as an apologist or to let folks off the hook, but to recognize that authoritarianism feeds off of this kind of fear and isolation and operates in part by continuing to limit our imaginations. In this last election cycle, right-wing pundits and politicians pushed a false narrative that we could have cheaper grocery prices or civil rights, but not both. They pushed a narrative that liberation for some meant oppression for others, that the equality and flourishing of our trans and immigrant siblings somehow meant less safety and security for American families. But we can and do imagine a different future, one not based in fear and scarcity, one with more expansive possibilities than anything we've experienced in history. And we need to be projecting that vision in color and high definition on every surface. We need to be shouting this alternative vision from the rooftops. We need to be singing this new song of liberation everywhere we go. Our prophetic cry can't only be one of resistance, but also of reimagined possibilities. We need to let people know about the beloved community that is waiting on the other side and help them imagine it is reachable and possible. Yes, effective resistance requires prophetic vision to be successful. Both an honest accounting of where we are and an alternative vision we can all work towards. But I stand here today with the task not of delivering a speech on effective political engagement, but rather delivering a sermon, a component of a worship service, one brief statement in this ongoing sacred dialogue that we all share in as we attempt to access a greater truth and a greater love than we can know on our own. At the end of the day, prophet is a religious word, and the work of honing and clarifying our prophetic vision is a religious task. And that goes beyond just an understanding of the religious history and origins of the word prophet. So what does it mean then to undertake this work of prophetic visioning, not merely as a political strategy, but as a holy calling and a sacred task? Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams expanded the Protestant tenet, the priesthood of all believers, to talk about the prophethood of all believers. The idea that all faithful persons are responsible for prophetic witness to and for their communities. It is not a political strategy, but a moral commitment that we inherit as part of this chosen faith, committed to keeping love at the center. And while Adam saw this as an individual obligation, he also saw it as a collective task. More than almost any other theologian I've read, Adams appreciated the power of our free faith communities. God, he wrote, is the power that forms community. Prophetic visioning is an individual spiritual obligation that we are lucky enough to undertake as members of a religious community. When we do this work together in this faith community, we have access to spiritual tools and discernment practices that can help guide us. Here we make space for silence where we can hear the still small voice inside, where we can connect with the spark of the divine that lives within each one of us, and listen for where it is calling us to use our prophetic voice. Here we learn to pray and meditate and sing and explore big questions in community. This is what Reverend Allison preached about so powerfully last week, and if you missed it, you should go online and watch it, because it's deeply connected to what we're talking about today. And that's not an accident. Our faith community provides us space to do the inward spiritual work that is necessary to engage in the outward prophetic task to which we are called. And when we do this work together in community, we also have opportunities to hold ourselves accountable. Our religious communities provide structures and covenants and spaces to ask questions, experiment, mess up, and try again. Communal space for discernment and disagreement can serve as a check against the risk of false prophets, or the worry that we will mistake our own ego for the voice of the sacred. At covenant groups and coffee hours and social justice committee meetings, we have spaces to ask, this is what I see happening right now. Is this what you're seeing? This is how I feel called to respond right now. Does this feel right? Is this path of resistance faithful? Is it in line with our principles? We can discern these questions together and hold one another accountable to our shared sacred values. But most crucially, when we do this work of prophetic visioning together in this faith community, we have the benefit of a lens that can help us see more clearly our UU principles and values, with love always at the center. When we see and name what's happening in the present, when we imagine a different future, it is that theological and spiritual grounding that helps us focus, that keeps our gaze steady. Our reading today came from Philip Berrigan, a Catholic priest and fierce peace activist. Phil, along with his brother Dan and 7 others, were famously arrested in 1968 for burning draft files in Catonsville, Maryland. And they released a statement explaining their actions. In the statement, they speak as prophets, plainly and truthfully. We see the sign, we read the direction, they write. We say killing is disorder, life and gentleness, and community and unselfishness is the only order we recognize. For the sake of that order, we risk our liberty, our good name. It's powerful stuff. But near the beginning of the statement, there's a short paragraph which has been written in my own heart and conscience since the first time I read it. Some of you have heard me quote this before. It reads, "Our apologies, good friends, for the fracture of good order, the burning of papers instead of children, the angering of the orderlies in the front parlor of the charnel house. We could not, so help us God, do otherwise. We could not, so help us God, do otherwise." That is why the work of prophetic visioning is as deeply religious and spiritual as it is political. Because it relies on a kind of clarity of purpose, a kind of bone-deep, spirit-led, risk-taking, life-altering commitment that only comes from engaging with life's deepest questions. Who are we? Where did we come from and where are we going? Why are we here and what do we owe to one another? My own search for religious community and my continued commitment to our religious communities is out of a desire to engage in the work that will allow me to speak and act from that place. Not, we did this because it polled well, or we did this because we heard it would play well with swing voters in Ohio, or we did this because it had the highest return on investment. No, we did this because we could not, so help us God, do otherwise. Our task in this community is to ground ourselves in the kind of love and faith that will allow us to make such a statement when we are called to. That will allow us, even at great risk to ourselves, to keep our eyes open to injustice, to name it when we see it, and then to offer an alternative vision that is so wild and holy, so beautiful and free, that its mere possibility strikes fear in the hearts of tyrants. That is the work of prophets, friends. And if we believe James Luther Adams, that means it is our work as well. May we together rise to the task. Amen. Now let us rise as we are able and join in singing the Fire of Commitment. Friends, leave here today committed to this sacred task that we inherit as members of this faith community, the prophethood of all believers. Go be sentries and lookouts. Go be truth tellers and mirror holders and imaginers of the future. Go forth knowing that this work won't be easy, but we are not doing it alone. For this is the day that you and I have been given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace. Practice love. Amen.